the infamous LS engine steam vent line routing and a coolant recovery tank install. So I am adding a recovery tank to the overflow on my radiator, and I went with this Dorman coolant recovery kit. Let's see what we got here. We got a cap and some hardware, some plastic line, and the tank, which has its own little bracket, and I can slide it out to empty it. That's very cool. So I got this ICT billet fitting to put in my upper radiator hose so I can install the steam vent line, and it's just a simple aluminum barb fitting with a 1/8 MPT opening that I'm going to put a brass fitting in for the steam vent line to connect to. As you'll see right here, I already have a fitting to adapt the different size hose from here to here. So I'm going to remove this fitting here and put the ICT billet adapter in its place. My aftermarket Griffin radiator is not an LS swap specific radiator, so the only port that it has near the radiator cap is for the coolant overflow tank and not an additional one for the steam vent line. I had originally had them teed together there on that fitting, but read from several different sources that doing so was incorrect and would cause problems, which it did. So I purchased this ICT billet fitting to put in the upper radiator hose to run my steam vent line to that. It's very close to the radiator, and it was about the best situation that I could go with. The tapping into the water pump wasn't really anything I wanted to do either, which I know a lot of people do that, but I am hoping that this is the way to go. I use a traditional coolant in this car over a waterless coolant for several reasons. One of them being the expense. A waterless coolant is very expensive and it requires a good flush of traditional coolant before you use it. And I've read that it will make the car run hotter too. So I stick with the regular antifreeze because this car is street driven and it sits during the winter and I do not want the water to freeze. Just making a couple last checks of the hose routing, making sure it's not going to come into contact with any moving parts and that it's secured well. And it's time to fire it up. Alright, here's my newly installed coolant recovery tank. I flipped the bracket I had made for my meth kit that I have since removed. I just flipped it around and that gave me the space to bolt it in, and hopefully when I pop this panel open I can see the tank. And it is located exactly where I wanted it. I can peek in here with this fuel cell panel off and see if there is any coolant in that tank.